Welcome to Adrienne Ross Squared, squaring off from A to Z. Now, you may know that the last video I did on this channel a couple days ago, it was about why all racism needs to be condemned and why I, as a Black person, would actually stand up for a white person who is being mistreated based on skin color, on what people call race. Like, why would you do that? So if you haven't seen that video, please check it out. This video right now is piggybacking off of a comment that I received on that video. Someone referenced Sheryl Swoopes. For those of you who are not into basketball and you don't know, Sheryl Swoopes played in the WNBA in the early days. She is considered a legend of the game. She also has been in controversy because of her seeming inability to accept Caitlin Clark, who is right now the face of women's basketball and is the most what's the right word? The most recognizable, the most on fire, the player who is moving the needle more than anyone else in all of sports. That's Caitlin Clark. So there's been a lot of controversy surrounding Sheryl Swoopes. Well, Sheryl Swoopes, you may recall, made a comment concerning Black people and the idea of racism. And that's what this commenter was referring to. So I wanted to do this video because I want to address something that some people may not understand. What Sheryl Swoopes said seemed really weird, but it really is a mindset that a lot of people have. So I'm first going to take us back to when she was on Gil's Arena, show you just the portion when she's making this particular statement the person was referencing, and then I'm going to explain further why what she said isn't really completely like out of the blue.
I'm going to say this, and then I want to be done with this whole conversation. So for people to come at me and say that I made those comments because I'm a racist, first of all, Black people can't be racist, but that's the farthest thing from my mind.
Now, I stopped it right there because that's the point of this video. You probably have heard the rest of it. Not really trying to get into the rest of it. She was just inserting that little tidbit, right? People are saying that her attitudes toward Caitlin Clark was because she's racist. And before she went on, she had to inject, oh yeah, first of all, Black people can't be racist. And then she moved on. Now, a lot of people heard that and said, what in the world is Sheryl Swoopes talking about? So I'm going to tell you exactly what Sheryl Swoopes is talking about and let you know that it's not something that's considered controversial by many people. Some people totally embrace what she said. Now, I talked about this on the main channel, the Adrienne Ross Show, months ago, because a lot of people bring this up. I didn't do a separate video on it. That's why I'm doing this one. I didn't isolate it. I made some comments about it in the midst of another video, but I want to tell you exactly what Sheryl Swoopes meant. And then you can decide for yourself whether you agree with her assertion that Black people cannot be racist. I think it's a matter of semantics, but I'm just going to tell you where she's coming from and why many other people feel the same way. So what I did was I punched this whole topic into Google to see what Google would come up with. And I found that it gives a good explanation to what people think about this whole thing. So I'm going to show you what I asked Google. I'm going to show you what Google pulled up. So as you can see here, I asked Google, can Black people be racist? I wanted to see what would come up. This is what the overview says. It says whether Black people can be racist is a complex question with different viewpoints and depends largely on how one defines racism. So here it says defining racism, individual prejudice. If racism is defined as prejudice, discrimination, or antagonism directed against someone of a different race based on a belief in the superiority of one's own race, then yes, Black people can be racist. Then it says systemic power and privilege. If racism is defined as prejudice plus power, i.e., a system of group privilege by those who have a disproportionate share of society's power, prestige, property, and privilege, then Black people, particularly in Western societies where they have historically been and continue to be marginalized, cannot be considered the primary creators or beneficiaries of systemic racism. Now, AI is generally, I don't do anything with AI, but Google automatically brings up AI overview, right? So AI overview, or even Google, tends to be, we would call woke. And so you can see here the agenda where it says historically been and continue to be marginalized. What you think of that is what you think of that. I'm just sharing with you this information. So you've got these two separate mindsets about racism. The first one having to do with prejudice, having to do with antagonism towards someone of a different race. Then you've got the idea of racism, which is what people like Sheryl Swoopes is obviously talking about and others have said, and that is that Black people cannot be racist because Black people don't hold the bulk of society's power or wealth, or in this case, it talks about privilege, even, and so forth. So when she says Black people can't be racist, in case you don't know where she's coming from, she's not saying necessarily that Black people can't have feelings of prejudice toward another person. What she does is she skirts that whole thing and she's playing with semantics. We don't have the power to oppress, so we cannot be racist. But what she's missing is that racism is prejudice, discrimination, or antagonism against someone of a different race based on a belief of superiority of one's own race. And if that's the case, then Black people can be racist. She bypasses that and she sticks on the word racism. So whether she said Black people can't be racist, well, prejudice is no better. So if you feel better, Sheryl Swoopes, to call it prejudice, then call it prejudice. The bottom line is that it's wrong. And some people were accusing her of being prejudiced, if you will, against Caitlin Clark. So let's look further into this. Historical and societal context. Power imbalance. Historically and in many contemporary societies, Black people have been subjected to racism and discrimination due to systemic power imbalances, not the other way around. Again, this all has to do with what Sheryl Swoopes means when she says she can't be racist. Marginalized group. Black people are often considered a marginalized group, meaning they have historically lacked the societal power and privilege to perpetuate racism on a large scale. Again, that's what Sheryl Swoopes is talking about when she says Black people cannot be racist. It's what other people are talking about when they say the same. Important considerations: prejudice versus racism. While Black people can hold prejudices against other racial groups, including white people, it's crucial to distinguish between individual prejudice and systemic racism. Okay? Next, systemic impact. The impact of racism from individuals within a marginalized group versus those in positions of power and privilege can be vastly different. I'm not saying this is what I'm saying. I'm saying that this is a prevailing belief, and this is where people are coming from when they say Black people can't be racist. So let's go with what this says in conclusion. Whether Black people can be racist depends on the definition of racism used. If defined solely as individual prejudice, then Black people can hold racist beliefs and engage in discriminatory acts. However, if racism is defined as a system of power and privilege, Black people, particularly in societies where they have been historically marginalized, generally lack the ability to perpetuate racism on a systemic level. So, Sheryl Swoopes never explained, and she didn't have to explain to the audience she had, meaning those sitting there on Gil's Arena, they knew exactly what she meant. So what she's saying is, bump that black, you trying to call me racist. I can't be racist because she's saying she doesn't have the power as a black person to oppress. So black people in general cannot be racist. But my point is that she's playing with words because whether you want to argue over systemic racism or all that, what people were accusing Sheryl Swoopes of, and I'm not saying I was, but what people were accusing her of is having prejudiced attitudes towards Caitlin Clark and having a problem with Caitlin Clark as a white person being able to do what she's doing on the court in a league that is by and large, I mean, the percentage, I'm not that there aren't white people in the WNBA, obviously, but the percentage is more black than there are white players in the league. So again, semantics. So her saying black people can't be racist, meaning they don't have the power overall to oppress, does not excuse her or anyone else if they happen to have prejudiced feelings and ideas. So again, there were people who just were like, what is that supposed to mean? Because she just kind of slipped it in. And people were like, well, what does that mean? What do you mean black people can't be racist? What? We're seeing it, we're watching it, we're seeing not only racism exists against black people, but we're seeing black people have those certain feelings, particularly people who are like really looking into the WNBA. And they're like, this is not right. So that's where she's coming from. Now, I would say this. It's got to be broken up even more, because if you're looking at the ability to be racist or the ability to oppress in the sense of who holds power, then you've got to even break it up further. So if we were to take basketball, since that's what Sheryl Swoopes is in that field, if we were to take basketball, I would argue that black people do have the power to oppress other people. Black people, and even though the commissioner is not black, she seems to cater and pander to the majority of her league who are black. And so when Caitlin Clark was getting knocked around and her fans made to seem like they were racist, I would venture to say that there is the power in that scenario, in those situations where Caitlin Clark is outnumbered, then I would say that there is the power to oppress. There is the power for them to go after the white girl if they wanted to go after the white girl. So, if they're looking at it, when you look at Google and you listen to what Sheryl Swoopes, think about what she really means, you're looking at on a wide scale. But I think you've got to narrow those things down and look at various institutions, various organizations, etc. The bottom line is, whether you want to go semantics wise and say, oh, prejudice versus racism, and the bottom line is that if it's wrong, it's wrong, whatever you want to call it. And it's wrong if it's a black person towards a white person, it's still wrong. And if you want to call it prejudice or bias or discrimination or whatever other word you want to use, if it's wrong, it's wrong. If you have feelings toward other people and act out on those feelings based on skin color or race, then it's wrong. So if you don't want to call it racism, Sheryl Swoopes or whoever else, don't call it racism. Call it whatever you want to call it. But the bottom line is wrong and right is right, no matter what label you put on it. And so you saying, well, I don't have the power overall wide scale to, means nothing. And again, I'm not saying Sheryl Swoopes is racist. I've never said those words. I'm addressing it because a lot of people feel that she is. And so they're baffled when she says, I cannot be racist. But I wanted people to understand why she's saying what she's saying. It's not some flippant thing. It's a very well thought out, strongly believed concept of what racism entails. So in any case, one day, well, at least when we get to heaven, we'll be able to get past all this stuff, and it'll just be appreciating people for who they are, for us being confident in who we are and not apologizing for who we are, black or white, and, just loving God, loving people. But like I said, I dealt with this discussion, this topic within another video months ago when people were talking about, came up again about what Sheryl Swoopes said. And but I wanted to do a separate video to piggyback off of the comment in the last video about why all racism and prejudice should be condemned. So what do you think? Get in the comment section. If you have not subscribed to this channel, I'd appreciate if you subscribed, and also turn on the notifications so you don't miss a thing. And also, if you've not subscribed over on the main channel, The Adrienne Ross Show, I would appreciate you subscribing over there and turning those notifications on as well. Also, if you wouldn't mind hitting like on every video you see, it helps in the algorithm and helps us grow. All right, I will catch you next time, God willing. God bless you, Amanda.